dancing on it.
What is this new trend that we're hearing or that
It's
I'm seeing?
everybody's doing it, man.
I mean, it's like 6, 7 and Skippy Riz. You can't keep track of it all.
Apparently, mine had a feet budget on it, and everybody's asking questions about it.
I saw
There we
that.
go.
AI doesn't spell very well.
All right, officially live. Happy Tech Talk Tuesday, February 3rd, 1 o'clock Central. We are starting again the year strong. I mean, we did have just one of these in January, but we'll be hitting it strong every other Tuesday starting now all the way to TSI, and excited to fire off February with a couple wildfire centric and drone and AI centric guests here. Stu and Erik will introduce himself here shortly, along with our lead host, Scott Roseberry and Will Brocious. So again, make sure to, if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, fire up the chat, fire up the questions. I will be monitoring that, bringing them in here. So meant to be kind of open, casual dialogue here, a little bit of a kitchen table vibe. And if you got any ideas or suggestions, fire them in the chat. I will be monitoring it. So without further ado, I'm gonna toss it to Scott, and then feel free to share your screen, let us know what we were looking at there, and excited to dive into today.
Yeah, I'll share thanks for that great kickoff. I'll share my screen again. There we go. Hope it's warm under there for the fire chiefs that are living under a rock and they're still using BAMs, big ass paper maps. That's where that comes from.
Oh man.
What else is in that? Besides, it's just maps, big ass paper maps. What else? I'm curious if anything else, the nuances in that wonderful
Oh,
graphic.
just haven't embraced technology and where we're at today. So, but hey, thanks for everybody for joining in. Like I said, we only did one show in January, so we're back on schedule now. For those of you that have been watching, hopefully I'm only in these fashionable glasses a few more weeks, and I won't have to wear these anymore. I actually have had a couple of people ask me where they can get glasses like this, and I was like, "You have horrible fashion sense, and I don't have good fashion sense." So, but thanks for joining us today. We're gonna have a good show today, talking about all things kind of wildland urban interface, and we're gonna show you some really cool technology that Stu has developed that's out there trying to help fight that wildland fire out there in the wild. But I just appreciate everybody joining. I want to thank the International Association of Fire Chiefs for helping host this, and we'll kick it over to Will.
Yeah, Will Brocious, Deputy Chief Charlottesville Fire. Uh, I guess newly appointed king of the ice sledding. Our city is covered in blocks of ice. It's not, for some reason, not melting. And we've been running a ton of these, I was in my backyard and slipped down a 20-foot embankment calls. And so shout out to the Charlottesville firefighters. They've been doing a phenomenal job at making those runs look easy, Scott.
You,
Maybe
you're not
in
you're not
Texas,
good
it's
at
not
the
a thing.
sliding sledding thing. You've had some.
Yeah, so goes back to our discussion before we started the show that I've reached my max out of pocket on my insurance. So I feel like personally now's the time to sled.
Okay. Go knock yourself out. Yeah. So
All right, let's meet our other guest. You want to go first, Erik?
Yeah, thanks, Will, Scott, Kevin. Appreciate you guys inviting me on. Stu, it's good to see you again, man. I look forward to hearing from you as well. So, for those who don't know, usually I'm doing Wildfire Wednesdays. So, feel like I'm a bit of an imposter over here with Tech Talk Tuesdays, and as a guest. So this is actually pretty exciting. For the past 5 years, I have been IFC's senior wildland fire advisor, and among other things, work at the Interagency Fire Center. And before that, I did a career in local government in Santa Fe, New Mexico. About 3 months ago, I was coaxed back into government, and so now I am 1 month into working as a fire chief again in Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Congratulations.
All
yeah.
Yeah,
right.
thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
welcome back to
it's
local government.
right. It's been a cool change.
So, Erik, it's been 1 month, right?
It's been 1 month.
So the guest should know a month ago you had an afro. And so a month back in the local government, he has pulled his hair out. It's
Yeah,
gone.
and I didn't need glasses, and my eyebrows weren't gray.
yeah.
That's what
Will you
changes in a month.
Will you might not know this, but I actually worked with nuclear reactors in the Navy, so that's where I lost my hair.
There you go. There you go, man.
Yeah, yeah. Great. So you guys get it.
You get it.
And it's been cool. It's been a cool revisit. Not the purpose of the talk today, but there's tons of tech going on around me now up here in the Los Alamos National Labs. For those who don't know, this is where the Manhattan Project was. So all kinds of amazing innovation that's going on. Some of it scary, some of it impressive. I guess all of it impressive, but that's my background. And again, happy to be invited on the other side of the token on a different day. That's who I am. Look forward to talking to you guys.
Yeah. Stu?
Great to be with y'all, and I'll double down on the thanks to the IAFC and Eric. It's great to see you. Congrats on the sorry, Chief Litzenberg. Congrats on the new gig. It's good to see you again, my brother. Kevin, Scott, Will, a delight to be here. I'm always humbled when I start these calls with public servants because I've spent my life on the commercial side, mostly as a technologist, but live in Northern California, have had my sort of life touched by fire in many ways, improved by firefighters in many ways, and over the last few years, have really been sort of looking at ways in which I'll take a different tack and I'll say, as I looked at the impact of fire, I've been astounded consistently by the quality of the men and women in the fire service and by the opportunity, I'll use that word, to provide better technology to the men and women of the fire service. And I think for me, I take real inspiration. I like hearing Eric talk about Los Alamos and the Manhattan Project, right? And we have such an amazing legacy and history as Americans in being the best in the world in aviation, right? Like from the U-2 spy plane to the SR-71 to all this like amazing innovation. And if you look at what we're doing, we're kind of bringing that to the armed services. And there's turns out there's actually a group of men and women who've defended our communities from probably more immediate threats in the last decade than any other group of men and women, and that's the fire service. And so, can we bring a lot of the true cutting edge technology that our nation has historically been so good at to the fire service? And that doesn't just mean good technology. It means building it in a way that it's affordable, it's usable, it's simple, it helps Eric grow his hair back. So that's really our deep goal at Seneca.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And Scott, today, I know, I'm going to call you Eric because I can't pronounce your last name and say Chief. So I may just say Chief Eric. Part of
Eric's
one,
good with me.
there we go. One of the things we try to talk about is, purchasing that technology from the side of a fire chief, right? And then getting it implemented down to the operations level where we've got folks like Scott who believe in that technology and carry that torch. So you're back into the municipal side or the local government side. What's it look like? And I know it's only been a month, but what are you seeing so far when it comes to purchasing technology right now? Have you seen anything different from when I guess your previous tour on this side?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll give it sort of a couple different facets of it. Technology is it's way more accessible than it was even just 5 years ago in my first tour, as it were. And I think like part of that is um, an understanding. Our workforce has changed. There's people who are more tech savvy who have come in and said these are things that'll work for us, so let's just do them. The interest from people like Stu and Seneca is, just exactly what he said. There's more interest from folks who have said, like, y'all are the people who are serving our communities day in, day out. You're doing heroic things without the resources that you should have to do it. And folks that either willing to put investments or philanthropic funds or just their mind energy into saying, I want to be part of those solutions, more so than it was, again, even just 5 years ago. But there's still challenges, man, that I see like for us in government, we're balancing sometimes just basic needs,
Mm,
and we're not sure we understand. Like there's people like you two, Will and Scott, who like you decided to chart this path of understanding what technology is and doing the work, help people like me get answers we need so that when we're deciding, can I give people a raise or can I get a new base level response fire truck that I need, or can I start to work with groups like Seneca to get something in the air that's giving us a whole different operational capacity. If I'm having to making those balances, can I count on people like you to help me decide which way I should go? And that's totally different again than it was even just 5 years ago. So more availability of information, but the tough balance still exists. Like our overall resources, for
yeah.
somebody like me, aren't a whole lot better than they were 10 years ago.
And
Well,
that's
well said.
and I think so. Technology, I think you don't adopt technology just for the sake of adopting technology. Technology is a force multiplier, and what it can do is augment your current forces as they are. So you can't, it's harder to hire on more people than it is actually to purchase technology. So I see technology as being that fourth person on the apparatus. Or as we get more into Seneca, I can still show you is that ability to get to places where humans can't get to. So it's where I see that technology is really going to help us advance. And I think we're going to see a lot more implementation and adoption over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I'd double down on what Scott just said, and I think it all ties together quite well, right? Because I would say two things, and for your listeners who don't know what Seneca does, you can go to Seneca.com. We make 5 aircraft strike teams. They're heavy lift aircraft, carry about 20 gallons per aircraft, so you get a little bit over 100 gallons of Class A foam for a 5 aircraft strike team. A single pilot can operate all 5 because they're largely autonomous, and so good for initial attack, good for air ops, good for mop up. Bunch of stuff like that. Happy to talk about the specifics, but I think and our philosophy is to build technology to empower the firefighter in situations that were previously unsafe,
Mm.
inefficient, or impossible, right? And so I think Scott's point is exactly right. It's not about like sort of, okay, how could you throw more humans at the problem? I am yet, and I've probably had the privilege of speaking to, I don't know, 200 or 300 different departments, and I'm yet to meet a department that tells me that the fire problem is getting easier. And I'm yet to meet a chief, although maybe Chief Litzenberg will be the first, who tells me they have enough funding and enough guys. What do you say?
He just laughs.
Yeah, you can't see it, but
He's only been on it for a
he's
month.
got too many. That's what he said.
Yeah, he's only been back a month. He's like, I'm on probation, man.
Yeah,
Don't.
exactly, exactly. But so you've got this impossible situation where the problem is like objectively getting worse. Funding is not going to grow at the rate that the problem is going to grow. And so the only answer is how do you make your guys, or sorry, like guys and girls, like how do you make your people more efficient, right? How do you make it so that, okay, there's a smoke report on a ridge line. You can send a team up there with backpack pumps, but they could be gone for many hours, whatever, like, or you could just send an aircraft up to investigate. And there's a whole bunch of places where aerial suppression is wildly valuable, but I mean, you don't need me to explain to you that it's well over $10,000 an hour to fly most of these aircraft. You need a helibase, and I mean, it's just not feasible so much of the time. And so we really look at it, and you're like, this is an impossible situation for most departments where you've got a problem that's getting worse, resourcing that's going to grow, but probably not going to grow anywhere near the rate of change of the problem. And so, Scott's got it right. The only way to solve it is to bring technology to make your existing teams more efficient. And that really is our core philosophy is like, what are the superpowers that we can give to the people who are, you don't need to be a helicopter pilot. All you need is sort of like a very, very simple training to be able to fly our aircraft. What are the things you can do to make the engine crews and the teams that departments have today much, much more effective as the problem gets harder?
I like it. Now, also, one thing I noticed yesterday when I was explaining about the call we just ran yesterday with folks sliding down these ice ravines, right? Was that sometimes we lean back to just the old school use of mechanical things, right? So we had ropes, pulleys, just the very simple things, Halligan bars and axes. But then when you looked up in the sky, that the force multiplier was there. We had a drone in the sky that provided safety, provided overwatch for us, and also we were able to use the footage to come back and go, what worked, what didn't work, right? Because we can only see what we could see from our eye level. But suddenly when we were able to view that aerial footage up there, we got a different picture, so to speak, and made some corrective action pretty instantly, So I always like the combination, right? Technology, old school, merging together. Let it be that force multiplier. Scott's talking about it, and make our firefighters safer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, hey, since we have Chief Litzenberg and Stu on here, let's shift gears a bit and let's talk about the wildland urban interface. So Will and I are from urban departments, so I mean, we know that it's there, and our neighboring departments may have issues with it, but we really don't see it on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
So let's kind of what is, I guess, explain the problem with the wildland urban interface.
Yeah, Stu,
Keith,
you
you
want me
kick
to
it
go
off.
first?
I'm gonna pass the problem with our wildland urban interface to our public servant here on my
All right, so let me frame it for a little bit. Um, so if you look at sort of, J curves, we used to hear about J curves a lot in public health during COVID. They were saying, bend the curve. You look at, it's a data-driven thing. If you look at an evolution of just about anything, right? When you do an intervention, there's a little bit of a fix, and then it starts to sort of climb into the worse and worse, and it forms this sort of J thing. And if you look at statistics in the natural environment, whether it's public health or whether it's wildland urban interface, something's been changing over the years. And I'll talk about maybe why in a second, but something's been changing. And you can see it anecdotally because anywhere in the nation, if you watch the news at any given point, you're very likely to see a large scale news story about a massive fire somewhere. And so some of us are having direct impacts. We see it largely in California. Some of us are having indirect, and I'm not in California, but we all as a group see it in California more so than in other places. But there's direct impacts, and we've all seen, pictures of New York City clouded in smoke from wildfires in Canada or Washington D.C. But even some of these places that are less traditionally sort of wildland fire spaces like the Northeast, they're starting to get direct impacts as well. And last year we saw fires in New York City and New Jersey and places that we traditionally haven't seen it. So this J curve is happening in terms of number of acres, in terms of number of injuries, number of homes, unfortunately deaths. We're having more and more and more. And for those of us who've been in the fire business for some time, we remember America's burning in the 1970s. Same thing was happening in the urban environment. Statistics were going nuts. We were killing people. Kids were getting injured. Buildings were burning down. And we said, well, what are we going to do to change this? So things in the wildland urban interface that are contributing to this. More and more people want to live in that urban interface, which is the space where the natural environment meets infrastructure. More people want to live there. There's more power lines. There's more water resources that are built there. Plain and simply, we've got a real long history of successful suppression in the forests, which now we realize maybe we shouldn't have been so successful. Maybe we should have let stuff burn a little bit more naturally. Maybe we should have done a little bit more, forestry, that kind of thing. And then there's a warming, hotter trend, and you can be wherever you are politically on this. That it's either a cycle that's going to place, or maybe it's an upward trend that's not going to stop. But it's clear that the data is saying it is warmer generally and drier generally than it has been. And those, amongst some other decisions we've made policy wise, have created a more explosive environment in this wildland urban interface. So again, if you look at the J curve, now it's our responsibility to figure out how do you bend that curve? How do you get that to stop? Is it changing our communities? Is it changing how we um, you know do forest management? Is it education? Is it the integration of better technology into our workforce to give us the tools we need to do, the full force multiplier, or is it all this? It's probably all this. And luckily, we do have, partners like Stu and Seneca who are like helping us be that. They're being the force multiplier. They're being the lever in this place where, and we all got to do this together. So I'll stop with my sort of preachiness on that. But there's a summary of the wildland urban interface, and what we might be experiencing.
I have to point out, Eric, is that that was probably one of the most well explained and simplistic ways of why we see the issue. Scott and I, we've spoke. This is one of those topics. I get it, but I don't get it sometimes, just because I've spent my adult life in metro style departments. But I never thought of that as the fact that, hey, one of the issues is people are building more homes there. My experience with wildland fires as being a child and Smokey the Bear, right? That people were going in the woods and camping and then burning everything up. And as you explained, there's just more infrastructure out there for folks
Yep.
living. Uh, the environment has changed, and I love how you put that politically, whether you're one side, it doesn't matter. The facts are the facts. It's where we are. Now, how do we bend that J curve? That is a
Yeah.
beautiful explanation. Kevin, chop
Thank you.
that up and use that again, man. So, Stu, how does your company help us bend that J curve?
I mean, so everything Eric said is right. It's like it's cheaper to build in the wildland urban interface, right? It's the other thing is just like cost of living is really high in this country. Housing is like not affordable. And it's interesting. The wildland urban interface actually is the build up there is one of the impacts of, whatever urban metro you're in, almost certainly housing costs are a problem. So where do you go live? You go live outside the city in the wildland urban interface where land is cheap. And these are like regular people who spent their career as nurses and teachers and just retiring into these places a lot of times. And so they're really wonderful communities. I think a lot of the best of America is like this frontier mentality. And so Kevin gave us all the reasons to be pessimistic, right? Like nothing that kept that, or sorry, nothing Eric said was like, oh yeah, these places are definitely going to be safe. So I will take the other side of that coin, which is that as we've built into these places, and I don't know if folks are familiar with the Paradise Fire, and I use it because an actor, Matthew McConaughey, who bears a huge resemblance to Scott, actually, play, famously portrayed him. You can't see, but Will liked that joke. Portrayed him in a movie called The Lost Bus recently. But these fires that start in the wildland urban interface, they can take a really long time to get to, right? And fire in a lot of those landscapes, especially if there's wind, especially if there's dry conditions, especially if there's a lot of fuel because of oversuppression or poor forest management, which, to Chief Litzenberg's point, that's not really a political issue, right? You sort of like don't have to care why risk is higher, but risk is higher. So you've got these situations, but Seneca and our philosophy really was to look at it and say, what are the highest risk situations? And does the technology exist in any part of the world to get to those situations early enough where you can make a real difference? And the answer, if you look across industries, is yes, right? And so for us, we did fire modeling on the top 5% highest risk fires. And this is specifically non-urban, right? Wildland urban interface fires, which tend to be fires that start in a grass or brush fuel model, which doesn't sound like Will has too much of inside his jurisdiction. But out in the wildland urban interface, there really is a lot of that. Top 5% risk tends to be, depending on what you look at, somewhere between 10 and 20-mile-an-hour winds. And it tends, unsurprisingly, to be a day that's high heat, low humidity. And so you say, okay, well, what's the average detection size? How fast do you need to get there to be able to knock it out? And then, how much does it cost to get that payload there? Obviously, you have to get it there through the air because you're never going to get it there fast enough
Yeah.
on the ground. And then you can look at what people are doing in Ukraine, for example, and you're like, whoa, if these guys are building this type of aircraft, I mean, some of them they're like using extra soda bottles and
Yeah.
like it's incredible. Like we as the sort of I include myself in this, right? The group of individuals collectively responsible for protecting hundreds of millions of Americans can't bring that same technology to bear. I mean, what are we doing? And so for us, I'm a big believer that it's not just the autonomous response technology that allows you to get there quickly. It's improvements in satellite-based detection, sensor networks. People with more cell phones is effectively more sensors. I'm sure you've heard about cameras. There's sensors on power lines now, right? There's all of these ways that give us awareness into the wildland urban interface that didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago. And so the technology hasn't yet caught up to the risk. But I am a big believer that we're close, right?
Mhm.
We're close. And it does take people like Scott sort of like, I say nudging, but maybe like poking or pushing is more
He's a
appropriate.
big guy, man. When he nudges, it moves.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It does take catalysts for change in the industry, but the technology is not so far behind the risk that we can't catch up to it. So I do think the next 5 to 10 years are potentially the most dangerous window that the WUI will ever see. But if there's good WUI, wildland urban interface, if there is good adoption of technology, I think that the most forward-thinking geographies, at least, will start to drive down risk by driving up the overall capabilities of the department, right? By adopting more technology.
Stu,
So that's my techno optimist take.
Stu, what you said, man, I've been thinking about. I'm a city guy, right? Through and through. I grew up in apartments and downtown, and I'd never want to leave the city, but it is so expensive to live now. I've built a house somewhere where I have deer in my backyard, and I think I'm in the middle of nowhere. And if I had to do it again, I think I told Scott, I'm gonna build a tiny house in the middle of the woods and run it off a solar panel and off the earth, right? I am the last human you want trying to live in that environment. I will probably start a fire. So, as you explained, there are thousands of people just like me, right, that are building out into these environments because it's where you can afford it, it's where you can live. But we're untrained, we're unskilled in survival in those elements, right? And so this is where that curve is going. And us in the first responder world have to understand where we're at in society and then how to combat that. I love your explanation of that. We have a question. It says, speaking of, looking at your drone here, it says, how are drones being integrated into your respective areas of operation? What about you, Eric? New back to being a fire chief. Are you guys invested into the drone systems yet?
Yeah. So we have drones here that I haven't seen in use, and but I think generally I can speak to that. There's a number of ways that I think drones are either being used or I see them being used. The first one's probably the most basic and what's been used most frequently now is just as an aid to get situational awareness, whether it's something that's tethered or launched on its own. And Will, you just talked about it. You can launch something to give you information that you didn't otherwise have because it's sort of the eye in the sky. And so I have seen stuff used even in the urban environment, even for that. But it goes all the way to what I've seen with Stu and Seneca doing in some recent demos, and I actually haven't seen it in person. I've seen the aircraft in person, but I haven't seen the demonstration. But I've seen videos of them doing full on suppression, and so I think there's a wide range of things, and you know, I think you can look at some of the models that are being used with companies like Amazon and helping with logistical delivery of equipment. And there's like such a wide range of things. If we keep talking about like the force multiplier bit that can help us do our job better so that things that can't be replaced necessarily with a new emerging technology, things that have to be done, the old school way or with people who are actually on the ground, you just have tools to help you do that. I think the sky's sort of the limit, pun semi-intended, on how drones can be used. But that's what I'd say operationally. Like I said, in Los Alamos, we have some. I haven't seen them in use yet, but some departments are using them pretty effectively. And I'd imagine, Stu has some images or some ideas on looking forward operationally what could be, become the standard.
And Kevin, can we shout out Stu's website? I know it's uh Seneca.com.
Yeah, it's in the chat on all LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook.
Perfect. Because
Starting to see
I
more
went
more
to it.
questions come in. So continue to fire up the questions. I'll keep throwing them in the chat. So yeah.
These
Stu, do
things
you
are
have a video
amazing.
you can share?
What's up, Scott?
Do you have a video readily
Yeah,
available?
you want me to like throw one in the
Or
in
share
the
screen?
right
Just
now?
if you play it, share screen.
Yeah, let me pull one up. I think, one of the really cool things as I pull it up here just to talk about it. So the system that we've built, you can think about it as like drone technology is going through an evolution, right? Like the first ones are small ones that you sort of like pilot by hand. And then you've got all the way to like the giant Reapers that the military flies, which are, sometimes the missions are piloted, sometimes they're not, right? And the military probably flies tons of autonomous aircraft that I don't even know about, right? You and I don't even know about. But the product that we've built is one that it is built so that if Chief Litzenberg is sitting at his breakfast table and he gets a call, hey, there's a fire in approximately this location, he can launch multiple aircraft, fly them safely, multiple aircraft, single pilot, fly them safely to the location of the report. The aircraft are built to recognize that the location of the smoke report is almost certainly inaccurate. And so there's, I think, 12 different sensors on board that are looking with IR cameras, multiple IR cameras, multiple RGB, which are traditional cameras, LiDAR, different wavelength radar out to try to detect whatever it was that caused the smoke report. And then once they find that, they autonomously fly to the source of the smoke, and then they check the wind direction and will try to suppress the fire based on the wind direction. So, if y'all have me back on, we'll light a fire up in Petaluma, California, where we light quite a few fires on our text range. Shout to the Gold Ridge Fire Department if Chief Strathcarry is listening, that guy's the man. But so we could light, a good couple 100 square foot fire up there, and Chief Litzenberg could put it out, while drinking coffee. And you just probably need a 10 to 20 minutes of training in the app, maybe less, to be able to do that. So that's the type of thing that we're doing. I can play, I think, a quick movie here, which will give you a sense. I think this is a 150-foot burn pile. There's music with it. I don't know if y'all can hear the music.
If you see me dancing, we can hear the music.
I don't know. Can you hear it?
No, I'm not dancing.
All right, fair enough. I'll turn off the music. But yeah, so this is what, for those who can see, we lit a fire, a burn pile that's a bunch of chaparral and a couple of old Christmas trees. I don't know if anyone here has ever seen a dry Christmas tree go up, but they go up fast. And I think this fire was about 150 square feet, but it was burning quite hot, and multiple aircraft took off. They're coordinating autonomously, so they know where the fire is. And in this case, the fire is very close, so they'll fly like in sequence. And as they fly, they create and share a model of the fire and of the overall situation that anybody in the fire agency can see. So, not just do you get situational awareness, but then the aircraft, I think on this particular day, the wind was probably blowing like 10 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, something like that. So the aircraft will autonomously position itself relative to the fire to be able to shoot sort of in a way where it's not too impacted by the wind. Right? I'm sure you all have all seen a helicopter drop in 30-mile-an-hour winds, and I would say the effectiveness depends on who you ask. And it can see down into the embers in the fire, not just the smoke and flames that are visible. And so it's got effectively an IR window, and you're watching the like individual hotspots. And then the aircraft autonomously sort of like rotates around, almost like a video game, to shoot out each individual hotspot. And it's pretty cool to watch. And so, you can take out fires much larger than that one. That was a 150 square foot burn pile. But the goal of this really is to be able to be quite easy to use. And unlike most traditional air assets, for those who didn't see, these took off from like a field, and we take them in and out of a truck. We have a trailer. You can put 5 aircraft in, like a 5-engine strike team, 5-aircraft strike team. You pull it behind an SUV or any utility vehicle. And so it's meant to be pretty versatile in terms of remote deployment. So I think, to take it all the way back, right? We see really great usage today of DFR in police, drone as first responder in police. I think this is a little bit of what Will was referencing earlier. And it's great for situational awareness. Anybody in the fire service knows that sometimes it's the 1 or 2 highest risk events that make a season. And so for us, there are times when situational awareness is not enough, right? And just knowing there's a fire is not enough. And so in those events, the strike team carries enough onboard payload to take out, like I said, a 95% tiles or risk fire. You can think about it across the strike team as having about as much suppression power as a full wildland engine. And what if you got a wildland engine to the scene of a fire within 5 minutes of detection, right? We can use the aircraft for a lot of things. I can talk if you want about the multi-mission capabilities, but from an IA perspective, that's how we think about it.
So I think that's so cool. And like one of the reasons why Kevin Sofin, Will, and I started this was to show the fire service the technology that's available to them today. And I think that we don't have a technology problem in the fire service. We have a technology adoption problem.
Yeah.
You name something that you think that there's a gap in technology, and Will, Kevin, and I can point you in the direction of somebody that's doing it. So I think that's why we started this, to show people that, because I think the technology you're talking about, that's just amazing to be able to see that. And I think too that what we just saw there too also shows this is not really replacing people, because you're still going to have to put somebody on the ground to go check that fire to make sure it's
Of
completely
course.
extinguished. You can't do that from the drone. So it's getting that initial fire suppression there and enough time to keep that fire from getting too big for us to handle in such remote areas.
That's a true definition, Scott, of when I think of a force multipliers. That's it, man. I mean,
100%.
you're doing the job of a few firefighters instantaneously. You still need those firefighters to go in there and mop up and make sure we've got it all done. But you're saving the amount of workload that it's going to take if that as that fire continues to spread. I also want to, what's the pressure that that thing is shooting at? Like, could it hurt somebody? If I if I was just to spray a firefighter in the parking lot, just if it slipped, just would it hurt somebody?
So yeah, so
That's never
the
happened, I'm sure.
no, never. We've never sprayed it. Actually, the current system we have is about 20 GPM at about 100 PSI. And if you hold it, it feels like holding a 1.5 inch like wildland hose. It has kick, if you shoot it at something in the parking lot, you can drive it across the parking lot. And if you just put water in it, it'll go 60, 80 feet. We do that because we ran early versions of this and we're like, oh, great. It's for those who haven't seen the aircraft, it carries about 20 gallons. And so it weighs about, I don't know, 400 pounds. But empty, it's small enough that two firefighters or four Seneca, like software engineers, can pick it up and carry it. But it's built in such a way that when it gets to the fire, including in high wind, you can still be effective, right? Because
Yeah.
you do a belly drop from an aircraft in high wind and you're dropping 20 gallons, even if it's foam, like how much of that is going to hit the fire? And if there's no wind, you're not like really adding all the value. So there's like an onboard algorithm that understands, okay, there's this much wind, we're
It's
shooting
crazy.
foam out at this density, and we want to be like relatively low to the ground. And we don't importantly want our downwash to make the fire worse, right? Because you all
Yeah.
have seen a helicopter land, right? We can call them drones because they're unmanned, but they really have helicopter vibes. So like you want to be like 40 to 60 feet back of the fire so that you can put suppressant on it without adding a ton of oxygen. So anyway, that's why that system is so much. And we had one of our partners say to us, "Hey, what if somebody lights a fire and then tries to get sprayed in order to sue the fire department?" Which
What?
That's
not on
fire.
my bingo card either. So now the onboard sensors, A, there's a megaphone in the front, and B, the onboard sensor package will recognize a human and like will not spray if there's a human in frame. You can go and override it,
There you
but
go.
like
That's the question.
Yeah. Okay.
If I have
but
to.
if you have to, right? But like, you can give the person a bunch of warnings and maybe it's a man. I don't know. We're like very much not a paternalistic technology company. But yes, for that precise use case, we made sure that it's almost like a Waymo in the sky, like an autonomous car in the sky. It knows, hey, there's a person there, and sort of puts an extra safety protocol in.
That's amazing. I was looking at some of these questions, Kevin. I think without reading them, we're answering them. We're knocking them out. It's talking about the drones equipped with water or fire retardant, combat early stage wildfires. What kind of tactics do they enable that traditional ground and air resources can't safely or
Yeah, but one
efficiently
one as
support?
looking at these questions, I saw another one just pop in. It's this continued evolution of tech and human and tech. It's not getting rid of, we're not eliminating firefighter jobs. This is again a tool that wasn't available 10 years ago. And even with helicopter technologies now, still the cost and the logistical and the maintenance and who's able to fly it, all these different nuances, they're just challenges. But I'm curious, maybe start with you, Eric, and then go into you, Stu, from kind of the tech perspective. But like the continued change management, system integration of autonomous drones and human firefighters working together. It's sort of this blend happening. What are your thoughts in
Yeah.
terms of where we are now, and what are maybe some like policies or change management obstacles that you see and maybe are important in 2026 to help find this right balance?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that directly, but I'm gonna try and I'm gonna go a long way. I was actually gonna raise my hand and sort of bring on a nuance to what Stu was saying. So it's a great segue, Kevin. So Stu was sort of talking about like a continuum of tech or tech adaptation or tech use, where Like this is Seneca specifically. The video we just saw is filling one part of that, right? And I'm sure they're trying to grow which parts is, but if you consider like a piece of earth out here in Los Alamos or somewhere else, you have the urban interface. And there are lots of ways that we can start detecting problems on that piece of earth. And some of it's people out there with their cameras figuring out ways to get that information that's more usable. Some of it's the camera systems that are being used, Pano AI, Alert West, and others, particularly around utility infrastructure. There's specific wildfire detection devices that are being put up. There's all kinds of improvements to satellite, and you're able to create this mesh of information about that piece of earth, which can then trigger an appropriately deployed asset like Seneca, which has been put in a place where you have higher risk and say, launch. We think we have an issue, and that drone can get over there and look at what this issue might be, determine whether it should do some action, suppression otherwise, and then do something about it. It has made our operational response capabilities significantly better. It does not
Okay.
replace a single person. But what it is for somebody like me who's trying to run an operational program, it's the thing that happens faster than our people can happen right now, plain and simply. If I can get something there earlier, quicker to do some sort of intervention, my folks are still going to show up and figure out, has this thing grown out of the capacity of this, autonomous suppression device and now it's, bigger, or are we good? I promise you those folks are still needed. And from like a change model, we just have to accept that we'll never be replaced. There's always this insecurity in the response environment. Technology is going to be built that replaces me. No, if you're smart and you're always finding the next and you're always making sure how to implement, all it's going to do is make your job better.
Yes,
So,
sir.
get that change management, get that out of your mind. We will always be needed. Just don't make yourself irrelevant. But then take the next step, like as something grows, because you're never going to have a deployment model with any technology or any human that covers all bases. Like when you get these larger scale incidents, I'm looking at these questions too. You can start to use the technology you have to make strategic choices. For instance, they talk about structure protection. Well, let's try to figure out, I mean, other than just responding quicker and earlier, how do I start to use these technologies to, perhaps create a barrier around a home? And there's some wild tech things like the group, was that Fire Dome that's coming out of Israel and
Yeah.
launching these pods from a stationary to try to protect a home. There are ways that Seneca, can we use your drones to, create a wet space or some sort of defensible space in front of a flaming front? But I also think of like large scale fire management, forest management principles. Can I now direct a drone to be doing interior operations where there's, problems with fire intensity to reduce that intensity so we're getting like safer fire on the ground? There's like, if you think big, if you just think, Now let's figure out how to make this technology help me make operational decisions that are better." Our people can start to do things they love to do, get on the ground, protect homes directly, hold somebody by the hand and say, I got you
Mm.
covered. Those are things that a robot will never do. And anyway,
No,
I
Yeah,
think change
I could.
management's
Oh my
always,
goodness. So if you saw me grab my phone, I make these little notes that I try to share with like younger firefighters or just peers. And one of the ones I jotted down while you were talking was not to let yourself become irrelevant. And that is so true. I'm sure Stu would agree in the tech space, in the fire service, everything you do in life, continue to push forward and don't let yourself become irrelevant. I didn't mean to cut you off, Stu, but I just wanted to point that out so it didn't look like I was chatting and being rude. Stu, go ahead with your point.
no, that was beautifully said. And I'm sitting in a conference room in my office now called Man Gulch, which is named after the tragic fire that I'm sure many of you know about. But I also think about how much has changed in the time since then. And it's interesting. We look today at the cutting edge technology of the day as like technology, right? But there was a time when radios felt cutting edge, when helicopters had felt cutting edge. And now, if you were on a major incident or complex incident, and people were like, you know what, we're not going to use air attack. I mean, that's you couldn't even imagine saying, "Hey, we're not going to have air attack." But obviously, air attack today looks super different than it did in Man Gulch, right? And it's going to look super different in the coming years. And so I think, there's a certain extent to which that's always going to be true. And one of the stories we tell internally, and it's interesting, Kevin is putting a question in the chat about wind speed. I was on the ground, and I won't put this pilot on blast, doing some research with a well-regarded air ops department, chatting with a firefighter there, helicopter pilot who'd been flying for 27 years. Great guy, probably in his like mid 40s. And he's like, I've been surviving in the sky for 27 years. And he was initially like a little bit resistant to the technology. And then we sort of like got into it. And he's like, there are positions, there are times when, the wind's blowing, doesn't even have to be blowing more than 30, and there's a canyon or a gully. And I know there are guys in there. I know they need air support. And I know it's dangerous. And I got two kids.
Mm.
And I'm like, which one do I which, like which loyalty wins? And I mean, whichever one he chose it's a hard answer.
Yeah.
Right. And so, when I push our team on, like, if you look at our aircraft, it's very opinionated about what's the front and what's the back so that it can be very efficient in wind. We are modularly positionable because you all not only know in your wildland urban interface, the high risk areas. You also know on any given day, almost certainly, which way the wind is blowing. Station upwind, right? We think a lot about what are those incredibly difficult and dangerous moments for people today where you're not going to get air support because it's too dangerous. And maybe that's because there's too much smoke. I mean, our aircraft doesn't care about smoke. Maybe it's because there's not enough night operations trained pilots. Maybe it's because air resources are spread too thin, as they often are in the highest risk parts of the year. And maybe it's about, hey, we're doing helimopping on a part of the fire so that people can go and work on building fire lines somewhere else. Maybe there's no helicopters to carry pallets of water into guys who are camped in the woods, right? There are tons of situations where I think if we look, you imagine 10 years into the future, you're like, wait, we can't just have air support anytime we want it. That seems insane, right? These guys in Ukraine can have air support anytime they want it. Like, and they have like no rushes, like they really have like no resources compared to what we have here in the US. And so I think if we take that lens and you sort of like look at the scope of history, especially on complex incidents in the wildland urban interface, it's almost impossible to imagine that we aren't on a trajectory if we're going to prioritize community safety, firefighter safety. We aren't on a trajectory where we're supporting our firefighters and our boots on the ground with a more complete fleet of aviation. Right? We're not trying to take the large apparatus out of the sky, but those are really expensive. They're often unavailable because, again, they're really expensive. So there just aren't enough of them. And to Eric's point about pre-positioning, if you were to pre-position large aircraft in all the high-risk areas and all the high-risk days, I mean, there's not even close to enough helipads. I mean, you couldn't do it, right?
Impossible.
Impossible. And so, but again, with a 10-year arc, it's like, it's not just possible. I don't know what percent of your listeners are in the American West, but versus other places. Like, we're going to start seeing material changes in the way of life in the American West because ordinary people are not going to be able to get mortgages on their home because they're not going to be able to get fire insurance on their home. And California has the FAIR plan. Who knows how long that's going to go, but you're starting to see this in Texas, in Montana, in Wyoming, in Colorado, and like all of these states, Nevada, across the American West, where regular people are starting to have their lives really impacted by the risk of their house burning down. So I think there's a lot of things that are going to make Erik right, where it's sort of like this change, if we're serious about protecting our communities and stopping sort of like the houses burning down problem, and we're serious about firefighter safety in the way that, I think there's a great tradition of, then I think you're going to see autonomous aircraft, not manned ones, flying in the most dangerous situations. And you're going to see a huge improvement in the availability of air support, both in the very incipient phases of fire, but also on complex incidents.
I think that, and that's great, Stu. I kind of along those lines, and what you guys are talking about is that if you're not willing to accept technology, I think you're more in danger of losing your job than if you are willing to accept it. And I'm going back to it's a guy from Silicon Valley who's in the public service area. I don't want to say his name or his company, but you're working with his software every day. I was talking to him because there was on the news, there was a major layoff because of AI. And I was talking to him about it. He said, they didn't get laid off because AI took their jobs. They got laid off because they were resistant to learning AI.
Mm.
And so when I see these job losses to AI, that's what I look at that and I'm like, it's people that are resistant to learning and using the new technology are the ones that are losing their jobs to AI right now. And I think that's what will be in the future. If you're resistant to accepting this technology, we'll find somebody that isn't. So, and is willing to adopt it and accept it and take it because it really can be that force multiplier. And I challenged people at TSI, and I talked to Stu about this when we were at dinner at TSI, is that, the number of fire deaths does not drop. It stays the same year after year. We've lowered the number of fires in the US, but our number of fire deaths does not change. How do we use technology to start lowering that number of civilian fire deaths in the United States? And it's companies like this that are thinking outside the box. And how do we stop that fire from becoming, the full rage fire that's the Palisades fire, that destroys hundreds of homes, thousands of homes? How do we stop that to begin with? And then manage force the way we want to do it, right, Eric? Because it's not about stopping every fire; it's about managing the fires themselves, so we can manage the force, so that when we do have these small fires, they do not become conflagrations.
Yeah, like Eric said, Scott, don't let yourself become irrelevant. And,
Mhm.
and I can almost promise you, if we went back in history, there's probably some firefighter who refused to learn how to drive a fire truck because all he wanted to do was steer the horses, and that person probably found themselves without a job because they allowed themselves to become irrelevant. And that's the key takeaway, right? Whether it's AI or in this space or not. One of the last questions before we wrap, Scott, you see this one is talking about for city departments like you and I work at, right? We rarely see these wildfires, Stu, especially in flatter places like Florida. How can drones become a special operations type tool like a hazmat, helping urban firefighters plan, train, work more effectively on high impact incidents? Scott, I instantly went to highways when I worked at
DFR.
Columbia and car fires on the highway, traffic backed up, launch one of these, boom, I can get a quick stop.
I instantly thought DFR, drones first responder. And if you happen to catch Chief Muncie and San Bernardino talking about, in fact, they talked about it when we had them on the last tech talk we did, talking about launching drones for fires in the city. And they show a video. It was a homeless camp.
Yeah,
And they had a barrel on, stuff burning in a barrel. So rather than dispatching a full response to a reported fire, they had a drone show that it was a homeless people with the barrel trying to keep warm. Move on and move on to the next one.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to use
Yeah,
this
it's
on those.
interesting. I saw this, and I think that instance perhaps was a responsible behavior in a homeless encampment. But
Yeah.
I've heard from a number, interesting, a few chiefs, but I've had the great privilege of doing a bunch of ride-alongs from folks, and I'm yet to meet a firefighter that is excited about a fire in a homeless encampment. Um, and I'm like, we laugh, but also these guys, they're not laughing, right? They really hate it.
Yeah.
And to your point, in a lot of these cases, you got to put the fire out, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to put the fire out, and but maybe you don't need to send all the apparatus in there,
Yeah.
and you can put it out quickly without having people running through that situation, which may be an unsafe situation,
Yeah.
a whole number of reasons,
Yeah.
right? The first couple of places where people who were resistant to this sort of started to get on board were hazmat, like propane tanks, car fires, and homeless encampments. And so, we talk about a lot about wildland urban interface because if you're reading the headlines, like that's what people, but we always think about building a multi-mission aircraft. I actually think the Black Hawk has done an amazing job of this.
True.
Uh,
Does
like
everything.
it does everything, right? And so, I mean, I think our aircraft is like 0.2% of the cost of a Black Hawk or something
Just
like
throwing
that.
it out
But
there.
like, I mean, literally, we try to comp to a Black Hawk in terms of what are the capabilities that aircraft brings and what are the capabilities our folks would want from us. And, that's everything from hey, the I-5 in Kern, for those who don't know, the grapevine sort of in Kern County in California, I think they have something like 1,000 wildland fires a year there, right? Like right off the highway. A lot of them are car fires.
Yeah.
To stuff like Paradise, where you're really remote, to, hey, there's a fire in a homeless encampment, and last time one of our guys ran in there, there was a safety incident. And so, we really do think about what are the two, we're not even talking about suppression. We're talking about carrying pallets of water or hose lines or whatever it is. So, we do think about being multi-mission capable across geographies and across use cases.
Yeah, and I know we only got a few more minutes left,
They're
but
both good questions though, and
that
they're coming
question
in.
with ISO,
The
I think
LinkedIn and YouTube has been firing off today, so thank you all. It's really
yes.
cool to see questions coming to me. Yeah, if we could get these two questions, I'd love to answer them. So, Will,
Yeah,
sorry.
this one here's perhaps ISO will get behind this and give FDs credit towards your ISO rating. Could drones like this impact ISO ratings?
I think ISO does need to be revamped and relooked at. I don't know how the fire service pushes that, but considering it does measure your fire suppression capabilities, and this is a fire suppression technology, I would think that, yeah, it should absolutely give you credit towards your ISO rating if you're using some sort of fire
Eric,
suppression.
what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think all of us can put a bold on that perhaps. And,
Yeah.
maybe a parenthesis saying it absolutely needs to at some point. I think ISO is still struggling a bit with how to value and evaluate suppression capability in a non-urban environment. So much is predicated on a water source, which isn't necessarily how you're fighting fire out in the urban interface. I would think this is a great thing for them to take on because, as Scott says, it's changing your capacity, it's changing your capability, and it should be measured. I don't know how realistically far out that is,
Yeah.
but it's something that should happen.
I agree.
And
And then
then,
I'll say on the company side, we feel like we as the private sector have a role to play in making sure this stuff gets recognized properly, and departments who adopt it get credit, and municipalities that adopt it get credit. Especially, in many cases, it's based on sort of like distance from a fire station, as you know. Um, this does change that, right? And if you have remotely deployed suppression aircraft, I mean, in many cases, that could be more valuable, or at least as valuable than, a volunteer station with one engine. No knock on the volunteer station with one engine. They just might not get there even close to the time that you have some of these. So I will say I totally agree with you. And whoever asked this like total deep cut, great question. You're like so on it. I absolutely love it. And also know that we think a lot about not just how do we deliver a great product to departments, but also how do we help the departments get credit for being early adopters. Because what Will said about like, hey, if you don't adopt technology, you don't excel. The same we see as the sort of like the department level, right? The departments that adopt technology also end up sort of like rising to the top and being the desirable places to work at and getting the accolades. And so, anybody who wants to chat with me about this, we are super invested in supporting our partners. My email address is s@seneca.com. And I'm always excited to figure out ways that we can collaborate with the most forward-thinking departments to make sure they're getting credit, whatever that looks like, with key stakeholders for being ahead of the curve.
I love that simple, easy to remember email.
Yeah, just
Yeah. And then,
Well,
real quick, do you use a dedicated ISR drone to help direct and coordinate the firefighting drones during operations?
So the way we do it, I assume this question is for me, so I'll just grab it from a technology perspective.
it's not for
Sorry,
me.
I get like super excited about like the nerdy questions because anyway, everybody's got stuff they're interested in. But so like the way that we basically build it is every aircraft, every flight is also an ISR drone, right? So our aircraft have a lot of sensors on board. And so they're constantly picking up information, and they can fly disconnected, but they all have Starlink in addition to LTE, in addition to, so they're always connected both to the cloud and they're meshed to each other. So they're always sharing information with each other. And without getting too deep into the like precise ConOps, we can both in real time and beforehand make sure our exact flight envelopes, including ceiling, are shared with other aircraft operators in a given incident. So if you're working on a prescribed burn, we haven't talked about prescribed fire a lot. I'm like a total believer in prescribed fire, and getting air support to prescribed burns affordably is like a core part of the reason to start this company. Like Erik talked about it, like we need more good fire, but fundamentally, we do not rely on ISR because every single aircraft is sort of like doing ISR as it goes. And we think of ourselves as downstream from all of the other manned aircraft on site, right? So if there are manned aircraft in an area, it's not a question of who has right of way. They have right of way, right? Our aircraft get out of the way. We will tell the manned aircraft where we are. We'll fly below them. We'll do. I know we're close to time, so I'm not going to talk about all the deconfliction, but fundamentally, we've built the technology in such a way that it's anybody flying a manned apparatus can feel really good that we will just be out of the way. And that our aircraft are always coordinating with each other, and that whoever the pilot in command is or the incident commander will be able to look at updated situational awareness on a sort of like single screen that reflects the most updated information across the full strike team. That was the
Simple.
shortest answer I could give to that question, but
Yeah, it won't hit anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It won't hit anything. Oh, leave it to Will.
Oh man, I'm a technology guru.
Yeah, you and your feet.
Will, come hang out with us anytime, man. I have a feeling you'll get along just
Man,
fine.
as long as I can fly one of those bad boys, I'm in.
Oh man, we've had fire chiefs fly them, my friend.
Ready to go.
They are firefighter friendly. That's the
There
term
we
we
go.
use.
I thought you
Fighter
were going to say firefighter proof. I was like, I'll show you a trick.
friendly. Yeah, I didn't. I'm smarter than to say that. Get out of here.
Well, I guess we're out of time, Will.
Yeah, buddy.
Man,
Goes
hours
fast.
go by fast. Yeah. So, any kind of wrap up comments, any last words, just kind of mic drop moments. Missed that one up. How about you, Erik?
I think I already gave, but don't be irrelevant. Get out of your own way. Listen to some of the younger people and partner them up with mission, vision-driven people like Stu and Seneca. And I think we're only limited by our lack of creativity. But thanks for having me on.
And also, Wildfire Wednesdays. You want to give yourself a plug?
Yeah, hopefully we get those fired up again soon. Kevin and I have taken a bit of time off, but there's more in the future. So that's all I can say right now. I wish I could give the mic drop date. I can't. They're coming up.
All right, Stu.
I'm gonna throw it back to you, Scott. I thought when you talked about the importance of force multiplication, we've hit that so many times since you said it, and I think that was if there's like one deep truth out of all of this, it's that we have to use technology as a force multiplier, right? I thought you said that beautifully.
Thank you, Will.
I'm going back to that. Do not let yourself become irrelevant, man. I was just looking at it again. It applies to so many things in our space. So thank you for that. Chief Erik is what I'm going to go with.
Yeah. Mr. Sofin.
To kind of build on the not being irrelevant, but the phrase that I've lived by is sometimes you look at some of these other people and maybe they're an expert in this and they're a subject matter expert in that. Not all of us have spent 30 years in the fire service or spent their life as a technologist and building drones. And in order to not become irrelevant, you have to not be afraid to suck at something new. And so whether that's trying to code for the first time or whether that's trying to fly a drone manually or figuring out again how you do this stuff, that's the whole point of these shows. That's the whole point of the IAFC Tech Council. We have a bunch of people who are willing to shoot the shit and get on the phone and tell you your idea sucks or tell you what you need to change or how to get better. So that's the whole point of this. Don't be afraid to suck at something new. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. There's the link to subscribe to this in the calendar. It was awesome. Today there was all the three channels had like, 15, 20 plus people across the three channels. So over 60 people listening live, which was cool. Continue to grow this, and grateful to have you, Stu and Eric. And Scott, any mic drop moment from yourself? I'm not sure if you have one more in you.
Man, I don't think we can add to what we've already done. It's been some great comments there that I like that. Don't be afraid to suck at something new. I like that one, Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna R&D that one.
I stole it myself, so. So, all right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'm gonna end the recording in